Salut tout le monde. On commence ça en force lundi. Je sais, c'est pas vraiment mon habitude de faire des lives le lundi, mais bon, je me suis dit faut qu'on brise la routine. Puis en même temps, ben, on a eu un petit peu de la difficulté à s'organiser dans les derniers jours. Ça a l'air que le déconfinement a commencé, fait que voilà. For everybody who talks in English, I'm just gonna try to do my best to to translate, and I'm gonna introduce. Um, I hope at the end of the live that he's gonna be my friend because this guy is really awesome. But let me introduce you, Nick Pilecki. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's
Hey,
really awesome to have you on.
hey, thanks for having me, Mark.
Oh, right now I think okay. Right now you're back. You were a
I'm
bit
back.
glitched out, but you're back. As I said, thank you so much for being there. It's really awesome that and also that you replied to my Instagram messages at the beginning and all. So thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me, Mark. I'm excited for this. It's been a couple months since I've gotten to talk cameras and everything in
Yeah.
depth, so this is like the highlight of my day.
Cool. So yeah, you said to me at the beginning when for like we talked for like the past 30 minutes. You haven't touched any gear except for once, but you haven't touched any cameras, any lenses, any so none,
No,
not
I'm
at all.
I'm I basically think I've just forgotten everything. So when we're production's back up and I get the call, I'm gonna have to do like a week of studying to even figure out how to turn my camera on.
So you're gonna say like, oh, this is really me. That's what I did. Okay, that's my shot. Oh wow, that's insane. So
Also, do you ever look back at stuff you've shot and you're like, I don't think I could duplicate this now? Like, it was
yeah.
just like the perfect ingredients came together, and you're like, I know I've gotten better now, but I don't think I could recreate this shot.
No, that's for sure. It happened to me once or twice, and I don't know if it was luck or if it's just like maybe the person that I was working with on set. I don't know. The perfect timing, the perfect people on set, everything came through at the right moment, and yeah. So yeah, I feel you
Well, if
definitely.
it helps, I think 90% of my career is luck and just aligning myself with good people and good projects. So that
Yeah,
would be a good piece of advice for people.
that's awesome. Um, I just want to say, first of all, I really admire your work because I've been following you for the past, I would say, maybe 1 year and a half. I really like your style. I really like the way that you're like everything in terms of composure, in terms of the lighting. So I've been following you, but maybe some people that are listening right now don't know you. So I don't know if you can just like introduce yourself, because as you can probably tell, we're speaking in English, and mainly
Yeah.
I'm working with French people, so I'm trying to do my best. But yeah, introduce yourself and just tell the people on what type of project you're working, and also what is your background story, because you've told me that, and I was just like blown away from by where you
Yeah.
come from. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Nick Pilecki. I'm a freelance DP out of just outside Toronto, but I work all over Canada and mainly shoot music videos, commercial, corporate videos, and some doc stuff. And my story, I think, is a little bit different because I didn't pick up my first camera till I was 28 years old, which is, it's a little late to the game, I think, considering most of the people I've talked to. But I don't know, the minute I picked up my Canon T2i, I fell in love with it. And I basically gave up my old career, gave up everything to pursue this full time. And my educational background is actually in optometry. So I went to university for 9 years and practiced as an eye doctor for 2 years, picked up a camera, and then just decided to walk away and see if I could make some pretty images.
That's completely crazy because I don't know if I've already told you that, but it's not. Obviously, I'm not in the. I don't have any medical background, but I come from public relations, which doesn't have anything related with video production. Yes, it's in communication still, but when you told me your background, I was like, oh my god, this is absolutely crazy that you wanted to do such a switch. It's insane. Why did you want to make this leap of faith in terms of career change?
Yeah, I don't. It's just like I never by any means hated optometry. It was like it was a great job and I loved it, but there were definitely days it felt like work. And whenever I pick up a camera and I'm on set, like even the worst day on set is still better than like most people's best day at their job.
True.
Like when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, the weekend's coming." And I'm like, I guess I don't know. Like I don't really think about Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I kind of just think about like, oh, I'm on this set for 3 days and I'm on this set for 2 days. But like, I'm never like living for the weekend where I get a break. I'm usually more excited about like, what do I get to work on next? And it just like, even on the roughest day on set, it never feels like work. And it's just it's a very privileged job to be able to make a living making images for whether it's an artist or a company or a good cause. Like it's a very fortunate industry. So I don't know. It was a no-brainer. Life is short, and if you can do it and you have the means to and pay your bills, why not?
So was your leap like all at once, or was it just like
no.
You tried
I wasn't that crazy.
Okay.
I wasn't that crazy.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
No, I picked up the Canon T2i and shot a couple of really low end music videos, which the first thing I ever shot was like my own band's music video. And I think I had the Canon T2i and the Nifty 50. And first time I saw Shallow Depth of Field, I didn't know you could do that as a consumer. I just thought that was like reserved for Scorsese and like that's what you see in cinema. I thought we were limited to like, because I grew up with like camcorders and those things looked like camcorders were here, cinema cameras were here. I didn't even know that's what the terms. I just knew like camcorders don't look like a movie, and this is what we have access to.
They're making a quick comeback though in like 2019. Everybody was just like, yeah.
It's whenever something gets too popular, it's like. Yeah. Like if everybody started shooting 8K super clean, now everyone's like, I think I'm just gonna shoot Super 8 for a while. Things got too clean, and now you're just always trying to separate yourself. I think that's why a bunch of people are, for the past couple of years, have been on like an anamorphic craze because it looked different, and now everyone's kind of like, okay, it's more accessible now with these DIY setups.
Which you're going to talk about later, right?
Yeah, I love it, but it's definitely become more accessible. So now like sphericals become sexy again. Like seeing a large 16:9 frame and seeing what you can do with that. Like 5 years ago, people would have been like, oh, that's boring. Like you got to have CinemaScope. Like that's cool. And now it's like, what can you do with a full frame? like, can you fill it with practicals? Like what can you do with all that space? So it's cool. But yeah, so no, it was a slow burn for me. Picked up my first camera off Kijiji and filmed my band's music video. And I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever been filmed. In retrospect, after watching it like a week later, I was like, this is trash. Because I didn't know what an ND filter was. I didn't know how to lock your shutter to do proper motion blur. And just like, piece by piece, I'd look at what I shot and I'd be like, okay, so their skin is completely blown out. Why is that? The exposure meter on the back of the T2i said I was okay, but obviously I wasn't. And then I was reading like, okay, that spot exposure doesn't do anything. And I'm like, okay, so teach me more. Teach me about like a histogram and where that lands. And, why am I locking my shutter at 1/48th to make sure that all my shots look the same and they don't look like Saving Private Ryan sometimes. So like, while my university education didn't translate exactly to film, let's say, I think the process of like learning how to problem solve and being like, okay, I look at an image, I like this, I don't like this about it. And you do a quick Google about like the thing you did bad. And there's a dozen YouTube videos, there's a dozen forums, there's like, yes, we've had this problem before. And it's like, it's not overnight you're learning how to make a good image. It's over the course of like 6 years you're just learning how to not make a terrible image.
I
And
see.
you're just like fine tuning it piece by piece. Like I think Deakins is probably my favorite cinematographer. I think that the best cinematographer in the world is not the person who's the best at it. He just has the biggest book of like, don't ever do this again.
I see.
And so that's where I think like age has worked in my favor, because as you get older, you don't get better at things. I think you just learn how to learn better. Like you like it, if I was to pick up something new, you learn how to hack the system, or how to like your brain becomes better at figuring out systems, figuring out ways to make things connect. Whereas when you're younger, you can't sift through, or at least I couldn't sift through like what was useful information and what was not useful information. Like even in university, I would just try to learn everything when really I should focus on certain things because that's what the tests were about. And film's the same way. Like you could learn everything about film. You could learn how to do sound design and editing and how to be a first AD. And it's like, but if you really want to be great at something, you should learn like one specific thing and hone in on like, if someone's like, oh, what mic should we do here? I'd be like, oh, I've no idea. Didn't learn that, but I can tell you what light we should be pumping through that window, through what diffusion, and where the camera should go. And I think that's like, as you progress further through, you figure out that the more you know of less, it kind of the more successful you'll probably be.
Oh, that's interesting, because you said something really important on something that I really like about, I would say, your approach, but basically also your Instagram account, is that you have this really specific, I don't know if I'm going to say it correctly, but educational type of content, that this is what I produce and this is the way I did it. You don't need all the biggest stuff in the world and all the different, I would say, you don't need like 20% on set to do what I can do, and this is the way I did it. It's not, maybe for you it's not the correct way, but this is the way I did it. And I see that you have like deep conversation with the people on your Instagram account about how to help them and how to make them progress, and this is really something that I like about you. I don't know if it came along the way or if you had it already planned to put it that way.
It was definitely never planned. Like it was never a thought out thing like, oh, if I do this lighting breakdown, then people will get attracted to it, and then yada yada yada. Like I'm terrible at social media. I post like once every 3 weeks, and most of it is I just love talking about the process of breaking down how something gets made, because not only can I discuss with people about like, oh, maybe this will help them on their productions, they can call me on my BS and look at my stuff and they'd be like, you're not doing this right at all. And I'd be like, that's great. Give me a pointer, give me a tip that I can take to my next production. Because when I started, I was just making this up all along the way, like no formal education in it. So it's kind of a way of like putting my thoughts down on paper and seeing like, okay, did I actually understand what I was doing? Can I repeat this, or did I just get lucky? So like if I can formulate in words what I did and that was the look, I feel pretty confident that I can duplicate this again for another project, or I can build off it because I understood the points to get there.
I see. So this is a way just to make sure that you can also replicate it and to give pointers to other person to, hey, if you want to like, not I wouldn't say a quick path, but if you want to just tips on how to do it, here's how. So yeah, that's
it could totally be a quick path. Like it is great to have the information there, but I honestly don't believe that what makes you a cinematographer is like knowing that a bounce reflects light back in, knowing that diffusion, makes light sources softer by making them larger, and neg takes away light. These are just the tools. Like if I go to a contractor and they tell me like, this is a drill and this is how this works, if I don't spend a lot of years like putting decks together and putting up walls, like if I don't put in the time to actually figure out how these tools are used and like how to properly do it, like someone just telling me how to use it, that's just like the first very small step into actually walking into a room and being like, okay, these are the tools I saw on Instagram. Now I actually have to make all the decisions from scratch. And
Mm,
that's a completely different story than breaking down someone else's work
true.
into making your own. So I'm glad people get advice from the post, but really like take that information and then go fail 1,000 times on set. That's where the learning is going to happen.
Yeah, that's true craftsmanship right there. So yeah, interesting. That's awesome to have your point of view on those type of things, and also that you can obviously break down your own I would say your own content in this type of way. So I really appreciated the input right there, because right now you probably don't know it, but we have a bunch of people, maybe 5 or 6 person around me, that every time that you're posting something, we're just like sending it right through our DMs, and we're just like, oh, this is cool, okay, maybe we should do this type of work. So yeah, you have a small fan base up in Montreal. So
There we go. I'm happy, but it is completely undeserved, but
yeah.
I am flattered.
So right now I would like to talk about what we're gonna see of your work today. So the first one is going to be SFA. Do you want to talk a bit more about this is a commercial, 30 seconds
Yep.
that you did. Was it shot in 2019 or
It was shot in 2019. First part was shot in August, and then we did a pickup day in October.
oh,
And
okay.
it was for a firefighting school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for to be played on TSN during like they have these firefighting games, or did in February on TSN, where it's like competition games based around firefighting skills.
Oh, okay.
And so it was cool to get to see one of the commercials that I shot on TSN. I think the first time I saw it, I was out at Boston Pizza, and I looked up on the screen. I was like, "Oh, that looks good." Oh, I shot that, and it was a very humbling thing. So I was looking around the restaurant, and everyone just kept eating their dinner. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the general public's reaction to it. Okay, back.
Cool. Okay, so you were super pumped, and what everybody
Oh,
else
for
was just
sure. For
everybody
sure.
else
It's a
was
very
just
cool.
enjoying their dinner, I think.
They're just like, yeah, that's a commercial, and I'm like, well, you guys have no idea the work that goes into those 30-second things. Like now, I see a commercial for Swiss Chalet, and I'm like, people lost sleep over this thing. Let me tell
Yeah.
you about like how the chicken looks and like how red that backdrop should be. Like, and somebody definitely lost sleep over this.
I see, I see. So you're a big critics of what you can actually see on television, of course.
Oh, for sure. I can see I can see where something like makes leaps in budgets, and
Hmm.
see where things are like, let's say under 50K, because you're like, well, it's two people in a house, they never left the house, there's no steady cam shot. Like you can see like the restrictions they put on themselves to like play within their budget, and
Yep.
not like let it be a tell of like, oh, that was a weak shot and now I know it was this amount. Like handheld looks the same at $1 as it does $1 million.
Hmm.
So whereas like Steadicam does not look the same at $1 as it does $1 million. Like a techno crane looks like a techno crane.
True.
And if you have that shot in your commercial, I'm like, okay, I know what league this is playing at. So
I
so
see.
a lot of my stuff is handheld.
Yeah, but you use yeah, obviously, but you use a Easy Rig to help yourself. You have a lot of dolly shots also, so
Yep.
you know.
Because a dolly is another one that like a day and a dolly can, in my mind, be interchangeable with like laying down 40 feet of track if you know what your shot's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you know you're pushing through a doorway, 6 feet is probably going to be enough to make that shot look expansive. Now, if you're dollying across a football field, 6 feet's probably not going to do a whole heck of a lot for you. So it would just be like if a director came to me and they're like, I'm thinking about doing a shot where you're swooping from one end zone to the other, I would be like, okay, well, a gimbal and two guys running on it is probably the cheaper move
True.
than laying 100 yards of dolly. So like as you kind of move up, you get more knowledgeable in about like not so much telling directors no or telling production companies or agencies like that's a bad idea. It's just offering like, what's the alternative that stays within the budget that you know you can accomplish well. Because you always want to impress them. You don't want to tell them like, yeah, I can do the 100-yard dolly track, and then you get there and it's like, no, you couldn't do that at all. They're just going to be disappointed. So
True.
like setting realistic expectations at the budget level, at least I'm working at, is another important part of the communication process.
So are you doing that, or you you're working with obviously the director who's going to help you, the producers, so you're making recommendations on the budget?
Like for the most part, like the budgets are set. Like there's not any wiggle room, and moving forward in the future, I can't imagine that's going to get better.
No.
So like, no, someone would be like, well, we have 20K for this. And you're like, how about 30? And they'll be like, nope, turned out it was 18. Don't get greedy. And you're like, right.
Yeah.
So no, playing within your limitations, I think, is a very important thing. Cause like companies still want things to look like $1 million commercials. And if you can tweak the idea of the commercial into something more like contained within a world, like I always love like living within restraints, because that's just what I'm used to. And if you give me a task or a problem, I can tell you the budget friendly, the workaround way to like get this idea across. It might not be exactly what they had in their head, but it'll have that same feeling.
Speaking of $1 million looks, I think I want to go look at SFA, and right after that, you've provided me some images and also videos of the breakdown for your set. So I think we're gonna go watch the video and then watch the training, and obviously you're gonna tell us a bit more about your behind the scene work. So that works for you?
That works for me.
Cool. Awesome. So first video of Nick Pilecki.
Change is in the air, and we all have a new path to follow. This isn't a standard school. Train in the land where you grew up. Learn on your own time. We believe in affordability, where everything is in your grasp. You work with the active firefighters that prepare you for the real world. We are the future of first response. Change is in
like
the air,
$1 million to me.
and we all have a new path to follow.
I already saw all the behind the scenes.
This isn't a standard school.
I'm gonna say it again. It looks like $1 million to me. So yeah, good job. you did great. So
let me tell you, it was not $1 million.
Okay, I trust you. We're gonna go check what you've provided me in terms of a background. Okay, so right now we can see some lighting setup. So do you want to talk a bit more about what we can see right now? I think it's in like it's in the big container, the metal container.
Yeah, this is one of the like canister training things for the firefighters. So about halfway through the commercial, you see these two guys like coming through with a hose, and he ends up spraying it at the end, and that was all completely faked. Obviously, we got there to set, and the school we were working with was like, yeah, so we'll just set a fire in the container and we'll spray the hose. And immediately my arm just went up with objections. I was like, what's the temperature inside this container when it's on fire? And they're like, oh, it's like 400 degrees. I'm like, well, I'm not taking my camera and my lens
that's
in a
for
400 degree oven. Also,
that's for sure.
This container is like 8 feet by 8 feet. I've never seen a fire hose go off in a container 8 feet by 8 feet, but I have to imagine it sprays everywhere.
Yeah, that's for sure. Did you have like a water housing for your camera, or not at all?
No, so what we ended up doing was so the kind of spray there at the end is all VFX, like so we had the person run in, pull back on the hinge on the fire hose, and then no water came out on the day, and we had someone VFX like water droplets in with sound design. We kind of knew that it's coming up here right there. We kind of knew that would pass, as it's like a half second
Yeah.
that you're so unfocused on that. If you hear like a water spray with some like with some VFX particles, like we could get away with it because it just wasn't worth the risk of like doing a water housing, like because a spray would be too uncontrolled from a fire hose. Like it would just completely take over the frame. So we were like spraying the helmet with water, so it looked like there was like precipitation in the air.
I see it right now. I haven't seen it before, but right now I can tell. Obviously, I'm really focused on it, but I could barely tell that this is VFX. It's neat, really.
So we were just like, well, what's going to look the best? Like realistically, this thing's going to be on frame for 8 seconds. What can we get away with?
Yeah.
And we're like, we'll just VFX. We'll get some like nuke particles, and we'll get a VFX guy to do that because like real water was not going to happen.
True.
And also, when you use real water, the hose becomes very like tight. Like you can't run through that tight space with a full-on hose.
Yeah.
So the fact that like this person could like maneuver through actually helped with like more of a flimsy hose, so they could move more athletic. Because like everything we were trying to do, we kind of had a conversation with the school where we're like, okay, how realistic do we have to be? And the director was like, you don't have to be that realistic. Like you can be over the top. And we're like, okay. So like
perfect.
in a fire, would someone be like running full tilt in a container? They were like, no. And we're like, can we have them running full tilt in a container? Just because we knew, much similar to like sports, like there's a reason why sports commercials are so fun. It's like this dance you're doing with an athlete where you're like going handheld, they're doing one thing, you're trying to predict what they're going to do, and sometimes the two things line up so perfectly that you're like, it's like you can't plan for some things, and you just see the end result and you're like that was gorgeous. Like a lot of it's missteps, as like one person will go one way and one will go the other, and you're like, okay, I didn't predict that right. But occasional, but you're looking for like 4 to 5 shot sequences in commercials. You're not looking for 10-minute breakdowns of a Scorsese film. No,
true.
So for the container scene, all fake. Well, I mean, all lighting. I don't know why I said fake lighting. But basically, through the doorway is a Ledgo G260, which is like a sky panel knockoff, and it's set to fire mode or candlelight mode, I think is what they call it. And so when the firefighters came to the doorway, we wanted it to make it look like that's where the active fire was. So they were like walking into orange, and that's where they were going to spray. And then the quasar tubes up top were more for like, I want to say stylistic purpose, because I needed level back there to give separation of like what they were walking through. And I'm a big fan of color separation. So if I knew my fire was going to be, 1800 Kelvin to 2000 Kelvin, put a couple of 6000 balanced quasars back there, and you're going to get that maximal separation pushing back on your firefighters for when they get into the orange, that they're just going to pop the most possible.
True. And this is the same, but the other way around, so we can see
the reverse. So if you can see the wooden pallets by the Ledgo there, they were fully ready to just light those up with gasoline and fire. And we were like, don't do that, because as it was, that container must have been 45 degrees in there.
Yeah.
And we were dying. Like, wow. I was like, we could do about 8 minutes, and then we just had to take a break.
Yeah.
Because it was so hot. I couldn't even imagine if it was on fire. Like, they were ready to put me in a firefighting suit, and they're like, just hold your camera. And I'm like, you guys are, no way I'm doing that. That's basically just throwing my camera into the fire.
Yeah, I could tell. Oh my God, these guys had no idea. But, of course, you wouldn't do that to your own camera and your own rig. So, yeah. But it looks awesome. This scene was a super fun challenge to be able to see if we could recreate, because the school really wanted this feature shown that they have these containers for drills. And this is definitely not your typical interview B-roll setup where you're like, I know my lighting here. Like, me and the director probably worked an hour trying to workshop how we were going to do that. Yeah. I'm just trying to see it once again. like the separation with the blue and orange. Yeah. And right now, yeah, yeah, it adds a pop definitely when they enter. Looks great.
Yeah, and a lot of those little like accents are like usually like those last minute calls you're making on
Yeah.
a set, but like I find it very important not only for my look, it's just like how much further can I push this to like because as a cinematographer, I think your job is to like just put focus on like what should the person be looking at. So the tools you have at hand are like depth of field, shallow depth of field helps, color separation, backlighting, like side light, like there's so many different tools, but ultimately like what you're doing is trying to put focus so that the viewer sees what you want them to see in the 1 second it might live on frame.
Mm-hmm.
So and then down to the grade even, so whatever little tools you have at your disposal to help you with that, I'm usually trying to cram them all in there.
Because also it's a minimalistic lighting, there is like only tubes and like
Yeah.
let go, so it's crazy. It's crazy that
I'll-
right now, yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of my favorite DPs use really minimalistic, like single source motivated lighting. Like I love Steve Annis's stuff or even Chase Irving. And a lot of their stuff is like, it looks like it's naturally lit, but if you ever watched it, you're like, there's no way that's naturally lit. Like
No.
a big principle is like all the lights coming in on one side of the room, and then it's nag running down the rest to get that like that pop of like a good amount of contrast, like land the viewer's eye where you want them to see, and don't distract and have the viewer where you don't want them to see.
Everything in the background where you've put the quasar, everything in the background must have been like all black, so it's just gonna it should have done like the black and then orange instead of going blue for behind them before you've put the lighting. So with the lighting you could create like the different color temperature when they come through, when they enter the how do you say it, is it a big like cage, is it what's the name of the big metal?
It's like a shipping container.
Okay, it's a shipping container.
Yeah.
So when they entered the shipping container, everything must have been black behind them and then orange.
It was pitch black. So like we knew we had to throw lights in there because I don't know, no camera does well in pitch blackness, and also you don't even want a camera that does that well in pitch blackness. Like you want to be shaping your image, and like
True.
That's one of the things that I loved about shooting Black Magic very early on is there was ISO limitations. I mean, there still is, but very early on I was shooting on like the original pocket cinema camera, and you never took that thing off ISO 800.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of friends shooting on like Sony A7Ss, and they're like, oh, you can take this thing to 6400 and the image still looks clean. And I was like, well, I don't take this thing past 800, so I have to learn how to light. So I remember buying my first two aperture lights, and I'm like, if I can't change my camera, I'm going to change my environment. And then you quickly learn that you're like, oh, this is how they make movies. On a movie, they're not bumping up the ISO on the camera. If something looks wrong, they're changing the world out there. And it's like the same thing with color grading. Like I remember when when teal and orange LUTs were the huge craze.
Yep.
It was like, doesn't matter what your scene is, slap a teal and orange LUT and get the movie look. And it's like, well, I mean, the movie look is that in the movie, she has a teal dress on in production design, and there are orange practicals all around her. It's not a LUT that did that. The color grade helped it pop, but the production designer was the one that knew, like, this is going to produce maximal color separation. Also in the grade, they're going to be able to separate her skin tones because everything is kind of bluey, greeny, tealy around them. So it's going to be a clean key. Like, these things are thought about. And it's just funny to see ads on YouTube that are like, get the cinema look. And someone's on like a white backdrop talking head, and they're like, M31. Now it looks like a movie.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah, that's true. But I think they just want to make people interested in this terms of like cinema look and just to upgrade. But yeah, it looks a bit gimmicky. But when you come
It,
from the bottom in terms of production and you're making your way to the top, you're looking for quick path to, I don't know, create something
you
better.
are, but all of those little things that like seem gimmicky, they were also the things that helped me learn how to do it, not properly, but how it's done at a higher budget level.
Mm-hmm.
So like I remembered when I got like a teal and orange LUT and I wasn't thrilled with the results. I was like, why doesn't it look like how the promo video does?
So it pushed you to go further. Yeah.
Well, I would look at the promo video again and I would be like, okay, their example clip has this in it. My example clip has none of those in it. So you start looking at like, okay, it really is like a combination of what's being captured on the sensor and what's being like built outside in the environment. Like what things should you be looking for to get images that look like that? So, but you know, I can't bash teal and orange LUTs because like they were a stepping stone of further learning. That's like, okay, how does this work? Like how can I practically apply this to the things I'm on?
True, that's true. There's still one video that I wanted to show.
Alright, it's a little hard to see in here, but we're walking into this shipping container. We're gonna do a scene in here. How's your camera gonna see anything, Nick? Whew.
Selectively sees what I want to.
I'm giving people a tour, but I feel like the tour is pretty lame because, see, fake fire, Let Go G260, what up?
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Fire.
Yeah.
All right, big fire, boys. Big fire.
So I'm just gonna stay locked here, okay?
You might have to move. Why don't we?
You think I'm too close?
I don't know if you've ever seen a movie where shit blows up, but yeah, maybe.
That was looking like nothing. It's crazy. This is true. This is true BTS raw. I love it. I love it. So what have we seen? What have we seen? That was the director, right? Correct.
That was the first AD. I feel like Carnival. I feel like Carnival music should be playing as I'm running around with a camera. Yeah, it is. I'm still blown away by like when you watch like a BTS video filmed on a GoPro and then you see the final thing. Like, never fails. I'm always like, wow, that turned into that. Like, it's so fun. Like, it's still shocking to me, but yeah. Okay, so I think we covered the container pretty well. That was fun. I saw there was some BTS there of the Winnebago fire at the end.
Yeah,
that was a super fun one to,
because this is actual true fire. So
that one's actual true fire, and we knew that we couldn't. I mean, it wasn't in the budget to fake something like to make that look real. Like fire particles in general don't look great, even at a high budget level. So we were like, okay. Originally, we were going to light a car on fire, and when we got there, they lit the car on fire, which I think was a Honda Civic, and it wasn't like, it was a pretty small fire, and we were looking for this like big Michael Bay type feel, and we saw this Winnebago off in the corner, and we're like, "What's with that Winnebago?" And they're like, "Oh, it just got donated the other day." We're like, are we allowed to light that on fire? And the director of the school was like, yeah, I guess we can. And we're like, okay, how big could we potentially make this fire? And they're like, if we fill it with like buckets of gasoline, we could get the flames like 40 feet high. Me and the director just looked at each other and we're like, yeah, if we can do that, like, we're never gonna get this opportunity again. So we're gonna do that. So we were kind of losing light as we were going for like a blue hour, or at least I was trying to convince the director, go blue hour, because if you have blue sky with like yellow flames, I was like, this will, you know, very DP minded, but I was like, this will pop the most. So we had like a 20-minute window where we could run that Winnebago drill over and over again where they'd reset the fire. So I think we got to do it like twice. So I basically just had to run around with them, not really knowing what the drill was. I just knew that like the director of the school was like, don't get too close to the Winnebago, because if an explosion happens, it can shoot out like 20 feet from the Winnebago.
Oh wow.
So I remember I was running with the camera, and one of the tires popped on the Winnebago, because obviously heat makes tires explode. And I thought that was an actual explosion. So if you look at the raw footage, you just see like me scour away like a coward, like running away from the Winnebago, because I thought that like, oh, this is it. This happens. This is where it blows.
Oh wow. So pretty stressful. That, of course.
It was fun. Honestly, it was probably like the most intense. Like, I'm not athletic at all, so that's probably the closest it'll be for me of like scoring a touchdown, is me like running within 20 feet of a fire with like a 30-pound rig, just like shooting it around.
But hey, you looked all right. You looked like you were a bit sweaty,
like a sweaty,
you know? Yeah.
Oh, it was like a 17-hour day, and it was all energy drinks and Cliff bars. Like, just, I have really bad nutrition when it comes to like set life. Like, I get so focused on images that like I never take proper breaks for meals. Like, I black out for like 17 hours, and I come out and I'm like, what happened? And it's like, I'll look at the clips tomorrow.
And this guy used to work into medical some sort, and he's not taking care of himself.
I didn't black out doing that. So if that helps ease your mind a bit.
Perfect. That was awesome. That was awesome to look at the BTS footage, because it was of course really well explained, but the work was it was really great. It was I already saw the BTS when you posted it online, and was like, that's it, this is the only thing that he used. And for those who were asking, Nick is using the Blackmagic 4.6K Ursa Mini, right?
Yep, that whole commercial was shot on the original. I've now moved over to the G2, but I'm not gonna lie, I think it's the same sensor.
Okay, we won't say that to Blackmagic. And for the lenses, but the lens, sorry, because I think you only use the 50mm. Am I correct?
Yeah, so I find that so what I'm shooting on is like I call it a DIY anamorphic. It's basically like an old German projection anamorphic scope that they used to play movies with. Someone found a way how to reverse engineer that to accept an image into the camera to give you a 2x stretch to give you anamorphic. Some of the downfalls are there are no inherent optical controls with these scopes, so you have to add something called a taking lens, which is your spherical lens, which gives you aperture control and focus, which I like a 50mm lens, because I think that if you're going to tune up your camera, a 50mm is great for if you have to squeeze in a wide, if you have to throw in a diopter and get a closer shot. Like, if you have to pick one lens, anamorphic, I'm going to go 50. If it's going to be a hectic spherical day, I'm probably going to pick a 28 or a 35. Like, that's just a great running around lens. I could probably get you any shot you need without, you know, having any downtime. And then the third part of the element of the anamorphic setup is like a single focus solution. So essentially, since you have a taking lens and an anamorphic scope, you have this piece on the end that turns the system into one single focusing unit as you're passing through like 4 optical elements. So it's a beefy setup, but cost effectiveness wise, it's probably like 1/10 to 1/20th the price of anything similar for the image quality. So if you can figure out like how to engineer it, tape it down, like, it looks ridiculous if you see it on set.
It's like the same of the 70 to 100mm in terms of lenses. It's just so freaking beefy. Yeah,
so here's one piece of it right now. Like, it just looks like a piecemeal of like nothingness. And then you'd attach your 50mm taking lens there.
Right now you're using the red, is it the Iskorama?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. And I've used a couple of scopes. I honestly don't think they're that different. I don't think that like, and people will say like, well, which 50mm taking lens are you using? They all matter to some respect, but like, I remember when Morgan Cooper did a video like testing out like Cooke S4s versus the nifty 50 1.8 mil, and half of professional like ASC cinematographers couldn't tell the difference.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, lenses are great, lenses are super important, but in my mind lighting is way more important. Because like you could pixel peep two lenses side by side and people would be like, oh, I think I prefer this one. But show someone a scene with lights and without lights, and the average person can tell you which is better. So if you're going to focus your efforts on what's going to do more damage into making your image like pop or look better, I would rather learn lighting and figure out how to work with that than get an extra $800 rental for the day and be like, okay, I got my Cooke S4s, but I didn't get a lighting package, but I got my Cooke S4, so we'll be good, right?
Are you working alone for your lighting? Are you do you set up everything by yourself, or do you have an assist with you?
It always depends on the job. Like for that firefighting one, we had a crew of 8, I think. So I wasn't setting up any of the lights for that one. But one of the projects we're going to talk about, Inhale, was like a passion project.
Yeah, this is the next one. So yeah,
was just me and the director. So obviously I was going to be setting up lights for that one. So it really depends on like, you know, how big the budget is. Like, I am not opposed to setting up lights by any means. It's just like a matter of how many people are around, and it's a very project by project basis. Like, I don't mind touching the lights because then I can get it like exactly where I want it. But if there's like a full crew that's there and that's their job for the day, I also don't mind delegating tasks and focusing on other things.
Speaking of Inhale, this is the next one that we're gonna go see. So do you want to introduce Inhale, because this is a passion project, true?
Yeah, so this one was not funded, a lot of shoot days. This one was like mine and the director's kind of for the year. This is what we were going to invest our money and time into. And a little background, I have 2 kids, so that's why quarantine's been extra fun for me. But my firstborn was actually, he tested positive for cystic fibrosis.
Okay.
And so for the first 3 weeks of his life, we had to wait for something called a sweat test that would measure the chlorine levels that comes out of the baby's sweat to determine if they have cystic fibrosis. So basically, my son was born, first child. Next day was told like, hey, he might, you know, not live past the age of 19 because he's going to drown on fluids from the inside out. So I just remember for like the first 3 weeks of like, I would just hold this little baby and I would just like break down in tears every day because I would be like, he's done nothing wrong. He's done nothing with his life yet. And like, I might outlive him, which is like your biggest fear. Luckily, he had the sweat test. He wasn't, he tested negative, but there was 4 families in the waiting room that day, all holding babies.
Damn.
And I can't imagine that everybody got awesome news that day.
No.
And that sucked. So me and my wife left there, and I was like, my good friend Brian Chambers, like, he's the director and editor I work with a lot, super talented guy. I was like, if the opportunity ever arose to do something for that organization, because like as filmmakers, you know, we're not nurses on the front lines saving physical lives. We're not like a soup kitchen feeding people. Like, if there is an opportunity to give back and do something with your talents, with your services, like if you can make a PSA, if you can make something that brings awareness, raises funds, if there's anything you can do, I think that is a very important way of giving back every once in a while to help like just creatively reset you and ground you back into like, okay, yes, sometimes on a shot you miss focus and sometimes like things don't work out, but there are much bigger problems than film in this world. So
True.
Taking on projects like that help remind you how fortunate and lucky you are to be in this situation.
So how would you describe the what we're gonna see? Because I think it's a 9 minute video. So is it like a short? Is it?
It kind of a blend. I don't
Okay.
know how to properly define it. Also, watch it on your own time. We don't don't put on 9 minute things.
Yeah,
here.
but what we're gonna do is basically we're
Ugh.
mostly gonna watch 3 minutes mostly just to have a taste,
Okay.
and the next 6 minutes watch it on your own at home.
Yeah.
Because we're still in quarantine, as I know, so you have plenty of time to do that on your own.
That's right. We have more time than ever, but people have never been more tired.
Yeah, exactly. But sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So sorry. Setting up Inhale. Yeah. It's so like we went into it with a very doc feeling. Like it's told from the perspective of the girl, Kaylee's mom, Alicia. She's telling the story about what cystic fibrosis is like from a family's perspective or her perspective. And we did like a pre-interview with her,
Mm-hmm.
and she was great. She stole the show. Her daughter Kaylee is a rock star. Like she just played along with every idea we did. Like they made the film. Like once again, like you can be a great DP, you can be a great director, but like picking the right projects to take on and to really sink your teeth into, that's a very important part to like making the stuff you want to make. And this was definitely one of those projects. So the mom did a great pre-interview, and we were like, I think if we let her do the interview, that'll be 70% of the story. And then if we kind of write a script based on some of these interview elements that we know we could just kind of more fine tune into what we would want to see as like a narrative arc, then we could kind of like create this hybrid to tie the whole story together. And it's all based in truth. It's just like the wording of certain things were like, we need it to be, you know, like 10 seconds long.
I see.
So we're going to script this portion, and then we want you to talk about this. And then we're going to script this line, talk about this.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that some of it were scripted, because it looks so natural. She did an awesome job.
Is
yeah,
great and authentic. And I think part of it that really sells it is like there's a floating camera with her telling her story. I think that's a great device to always make it seem authentic, even though some of the lines were like delivered into a condenser mic in a very not natural setting. But yeah, so if someone asked me, like, it's definitely a doc, but
Cool.
I would say it's a doc with narrative elements.
so we're gonna look at it. Like I cannot wait for the people to see it, because it's really good. So as I said, 3 minutes, we're gonna come back and we're gonna still talk about it, because we have plenty of behind the scene for this one. So Inhale with Nick Pilecki.
I don't think that I've ever asked why us. Bad luck. I would not wish this on anyone. I would never want to see another family go through what we're going through.
It's me, Kaylee. And I have cystic fibrosis. It is a genetic disease, but doesn't mean I can't have fun.
Kaylee has always been an interesting kid. She's always been viciously independent and happy. I don't think I've ever met a kid as happy as her. She is just pure joy. Her smile is infectious, and even as a baby, she'd smile at you and you just felt like you were looking into your soul. When you have kids, the love that you feel for them is unlike anything else. It's the fiercest, strongest love in the world, and so she means the whole world to us. There really isn't anything that we wouldn't do for her. remember vividly, I was sitting on our recliner and she was sound asleep and I was reading, and I just remember thinking this is the most perfect moment in the whole world. And then the phone rang and it was my doctor's office. And she said that she didn't want me to be caught off guard, that Kaylee had 2 mutations and they were all but certain she had cystic fibrosis. I remember crying. I remember my husband crying. It was just honestly the hardest day I can ever remember in my entire life.
One, two, three.
Cystic fibrosis is the most common fatal genetic disease affecting children and young adults in Canada. All the mucus that we have in our bodies that surrounds all of our internal organs in someone with cystic fibrosis becomes really thick and sticky. And so in the lungs, that thick, sticky mucus, it traps bacteria. So over time, you end up with chronic infection, and that's usually ultimately the cause of death in someone with cystic fibrosis. Very young, very young. She figured out that you need your lungs to live, and she figured out that CF can make your lungs not work. And I think she was not even 3 the first time she said to me that CF can make your lungs not work, so CF can make you not live. It was more of an academic at that point because she didn't really know what that meant. So that was a little bit easier than as she got older, when she finally understood what it means to die. And of course, she's a smart little girl, so she asked me if kids ever die from CF. And that was a lot harder because that was the first time that I had to answer her honestly and admit that even children her age die from CF.
I'm nervous.
Of course.
All I can see is eyeballs.
She cried and told me how much she hated it and how it was so unfair that she had to have CF and nobody else in the family did and nobody understood her. And she felt so alone. And there was nothing that I could say to make that better. So I did the only thing that a mom can do in that situation. I hugged her and we cried. And we both cried and cried. And I just reminded her that we were there, that we loved her, and that it was okay for her to feel that way sometimes. And she looked at my husband and I and asked if we were sorry that she was born. She thought that she was making her life very difficult, and that we must not like her very much, and that we must be really sorry we had her.
This looks awesome, man. It's
Thanks.
It's moving. It's really moving to see with the story that you said earlier. It's I could feel it, really, definitely. Good job. It's
That's good. No, I'm super happy with this piece, and it was one of the first things that like I felt like a real filmmaker, like telling a story for a purpose more than just like serving a company's needs. And don't get me wrong, I love commercials. Like I love commercials a lot. I actually don't know why people rag on commercials. It's like one of my favorite things to shoot because they're budgeted. You get to spend all day like on the silliest little things, and it's fun.
Yeah.
But this was one that was like, I almost didn't focus so much on the technical cinematography of side of things for some shots. And it's like, some shots are going to look better than others, but every moment has to feel right. And that was an interesting task for me because I've been living in music video world and commercial world for so long, where it's like every shot has to look great because you only have 30 seconds, you only have 3 minutes to catch people's attention. This one, the director was like, I want to open on a 15-second dolly. And I'm like, oh, well, I've never done anything like it was a very slow burn. It was like, no, the viewers who want to watch it will watch it, and we're not gonna pander to anybody with like the same guy who edited the firefighting commercial edited this, and he didn't want to do something with like quick cuts and like loop people in. He's like, no, I want to make something that's just a story with no, like, it's just someone telling a story and visuals over top, and it can be, you know, even that simple. If it's done effectively, it'll work.
Yep, it did work. That's awesome. We're gonna jump in with the training, I would say, videos and stills, but yeah, is this the one that you were talking about?
Yeah, so this is the opening shot that was like definitely more on the narrative side of things. So that's Alicia, or Kaylee's mom, and the director, that's Brian right there at the bottom of the frame. He had this whole idea of like having this box, or having this move be the motivation or the plot points for moving the story along. So that first scene where she's putting a toy into the box, it's more meant to like build, you know, a bit of suspense. Like, we don't know what's happening with this character that's name's been written on the box, and you kind of like watch the journey as you see, spoiler alert, at the end, that the box is more for moving to a new home to cater to them. And these two BTS shots are actually, I'm just putting it together now, but like it's the first and last shot of the video.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't notice that earlier. But yeah, so it opens with like a very long dolly shot in, and it's completely lit. So I think we had a 300D out the window and a Falcon Eyes overhead as a kind of an internal warm light. And then what the director wanted was like a slow push into the room, but their house, the hallway was so small that we couldn't actually do like a 6-foot push in. So we had to like rotate the camera obviously halfway through the move to like reveal the character and make it a 15-second move. And it ended up being way more dynamic, and I loved it even more because you're kind of looking at it and you're like, okay, this is a kid's room. We see obviously a parent or an older relative. What are they doing? And it's like not too much is given away right at the beginning because you're seeing the camera pan halfway through its movement. So happy accident. It ended up working out, but it was just the size of the house that forced our hands into that movement.
Yeah, but it's still working. It worked. So basically, you know, happy discovery on set.
Yeah, I feel like I get so many happy accidents, or I just find a way of like explaining my way out of it. I'm like, no, this is good. This is like, this is exactly how it should be given the circumstances.
Yeah.
And then same thing, 6-foot dolly. This is like the ending plate, which I think is like an 11 or 12-second shot, which, you know, it's kind of nice. It was nice to be able to hold on to a shot that you like take 30 to 40 minutes to light, and you know it's not going to be like a 2-second shot. Like it's actually going to live for a while. So that was a pleasure. But beyond these couple of shots and a couple of sequences within the piece, like there's the Kaylee putting the medicine bottle in that I think I saw playing in there. That one was lit for the most part. Most of the stuff was single source or all natural.
So we
for this project, just because like it was very important to the director that like it is based around the moments and not looking like a commercial. So there could be like commercial elements, but it really has to live within like those moments. So, and this was cool too, because our producer, we were having a conversation over drinks one night about this project. So I think it ended up being like 11 or 12 shoot days, obviously with this many locations, not full shoot days, but like some would be 3 hours, some would be 6 hours. Like we just knew we needed a bunch of locations to sell the story that we'd been following this family around for like 8 months. And I said in jest one night, like it'd be great if we could film at the Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto. And the producer made a call, kind of gave the backstory about the family, and they let us in at like 6 a.m. one morning with nobody there. And we were like, this is crazy that they're just like they're going to let us film at Ripley's Aquarium for 2 hours uninterrupted.
Wow.
And so can't thank them enough, because that added a ton of production value in terms of like, because aquariums essentially are like giant moving paintings, which are soft sources. Like, it's a filmmaker's dream, really. Like, it's just like, you have so much going in your favor in terms of like, there's fish moving in the background. It's a giant 20 by 20 soft source that gives specular moving lights on your subject. Like, I know the shots look good, but very little of that has to do with me. Like, it's setting yourself up for success, because like, that's one of those locations that, you know, inevitably will look good, and vice versa. Like, avoiding places that you know will look bad is like, for instance, my office here, it's 4 white dry walls with nothing around. Like, making this room look good is a challenge. Making an aquarium look good is no challenge whatsoever. So
the aquarium is in the end credits. So in DP.
Yeah.
So there is Nick Pilecki, and then there is the aquarium right after that. So
they get third credit, basically.
Okay, I see.
But
Go ahead.
that's an important point to make, like, on stuff that like we're all playing within budgets, and we're all like wondering how other people are making stuff, and you're like, oh, if only I had, you know, an Alexa, if only I had these lenses, if only I had like 3 M40s pushing out these windows, if only I had this amazing old church or cottage to shoot in. And it's like, realistically, you're not going to be given these things every shoot.
Yeah.
So like, what are some alternatives? What are some locations? Like, can you bring in curtains? Can you bring in some textures? Can you bring in your own practical lamps? What can you do to spice things up? Because no one's ever given the ideal situation. They're always thrown into the less than ideal situation. And what you do about it, or how you problem solve it, I think is like what you bring to the table as a cinematographer. True.
Very interesting. Before we're moving to the last one, which is Save Me, there is some comments while we're doing this interview, and I know Jonathan, who's working with me, he says you're one of the reason we bought an anamorphic adapter. So this is true. I can comment on it. Yeah, you are one of the reasons that we bought one. I think we have like the blue star, and we're putting it onto an old Nikon, just to, you know, try something else. And yeah,
I'm gonna be honest, if you can hit focus with it, they all look pretty similar to my eye.
Yeah,
within normal limits. Like, as long as you can tune it up and hit focus with it and it looks sharp, you're fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So no, they're great. Like, for price point, to be able to shoot something that looks like legit anamorphic, they're great. Like, I can't believe that was even an option. I'm excited to see what the future holds, because like, right now there are lenses around like the 10,000 USD mark for like housed. The optics are based on the same principles as these DIY setups. Like, if you're getting an anamorphic lens for 10 grand, they're hacking the optics in it. It's not like how you would see like Hawk or Lomo anamorphics. So, but $10,000 for a lens, that's still pretty steep for a lot of people doing like higher end corporate, lower end commercial stuff. Like, that's, you know, that's a tougher pill to swallow. So if there's something that can help bring that cost down but give you the look you're after, it at least gets your feet wet into being like, oh, maybe I can like put $1,000 towards lenses on the next one, because I know I really like this look.
Yeah.
And I want to see the best version of that look. So it's much similar to like buying the T2i. It's like, I love this. What's the next gradual step? Like, is it a pocket 4K? Is it like what's the next step that, you know, it's not an Alexa, but it helps minimize the gap between where you want to get to.
But every time that somebody's like asking me a question about these type of anamorphic adapters, I'm always saying, oh, these are great. And yeah, but you know, I don't know if they're great. And I'm just like, go on. Check Nick Pilecki. Yeah, okay. Yeah, see?
Well,
this is what you can get.
beyond whether they're great or not, I still think, like, look at the final image.
Yeah.
Are you happy with the final image?
Mm-hmm.
What it took to get there, I'm less concerned about that. Like, I don't care what camera you shot it on. I don't care what lens you shot it on. Like, if you're happy with the final image, then you did it.
Yeah.
You're great. If the client's happy, if you're happy, if you can make, and then beyond that, the image is one part of a project. If like the sound and the story, if like a million other things come together and the visuals are great, that's when like you get the magic. And that's what we're all like yearning for. Like, it's not great shooting a project where you're like, wow, the images are great, but I didn't connect with the story. I don't believe these actors. I hated the sound design.
Mm-hmm.
Like visuals are a part of that. They're my part of it, but like I want to see the whole production come together, because that's when I'm like the most excited to show something off.
Have you ever been, I wouldn't say snobbed, but just like looked at by a client with these type of settings in terms of like anamorphic adapters and stuff? Have you ever been like, what the hell is that?
100%. I've walked on set before with directors that are like we're not shooting with that, and I'm like, well, we do not have an alternative, so yeah. I don't know what to tell you.
But they were happy at the end, right? Correct?
They were happy at the end, but yeah,
So-
they see this taped on lens, and like they're sweating bullets, because I see the client and the agency over their shoulder looking at like,
What the hell?
what is that? And then they see like the feed running through the Teradek, and everything's all good, but like just looking at the the piecemeal robot side of it, yeah, it's not sexy at all. But the one thing I'm pretty sure isn't going to show up in the final commercial is my rig.
True.
So
True. It's only going to show up on your Instagram account, so
that's right.
All right.
And yeah.
So we're gonna jump at on the video clip that you've shot, which is "Save Me." So do you want to talk a bit more about that before we go see it?
Sure. So this is a music video that I did with Dylan Herenchuk out of Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm.
We actually met through Instagram, and he was a fan, as I was, of his music video work, and it kind of just aligned that a project came up in Saskatoon where he needed a DP, because he wanted to do some darker, some more stylistically like what aligned with a lot of the stuff that I shot. So I flew out there, and it was a song that was more catered to a younger high school audience, I would say, and we were aware of that when we heard it. And what got me excited about the project was Dylan sent me the script for it, and it was a much darker take than what you would imagine the song would call for.
Mm-hmm.
And I read his treatment, read his script, and I was just like, yeah, I want to film this. Like, it included like, teenage struggle with homosexuality and suicide, and like it had a lot more of the narrative elements that I find that I'm searching for now in a project. Because let's say a year ago I was like, oh, this will be great because I'll get this cool shot out of this commercial, and then that'll like go on Instagram and it'll look great. Now I'm like, okay, how can I make 150 shots come together as a project? Because that's the challenge now. It's less like get 3 great shots, and now it's like make 4 minutes solid, make no shot fall. And if you can attach that to, let's say, a music video with a great director and a great vision, then you're going to come out with something that you're going to be happier with. So it's definitely a more high school focused song. I will preface with that.
No, but it's fine. It's not. We're not judging the type of music that.
No, well, first of all, the artist is 13, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. But I loved his treatment, and it's kind of following 3 characters that are all dealing with their own struggles.
Yep.
And it was the first time I got to shoot underwater, which was fun too. So I did a ton of research on how we could do that in an indoor pool, because once again, you asked me to shoot something and I'm like, I'm going to find the budget friendly way to do this.
True.
So that was definitely a fun challenge, and you know, was the riskiest I felt that I'd ever been with a camera was putting it in a fish tank. That was definitely, I think, the dumbest I've ever been with a camera. Or I was just holding it in a fish tank, and I'm like, oh, if this thing starts leaking, I'm boned. Like, there's nothing we can do about that.
I hope you had insurance on the set because you know.
I do, but I don't know what insurance would cover when it
Yeah.
comes like what were you doing with the camera? Be like, I'm gonna be honest, I was just being perfectly safe with it, and then it was just dunked in water. So I don't know.
Yeah, it happened. I don't know how, but you know. But yeah, we're gonna go watch it, and after that, just gonna see some BTS again. So this is Save Me by Nick Pilecki. And who was the director? Sorry.
Dylan Harinchuk. So he's based out of Saskatchewan, and Versa Films is his company. Super talented guy.
Yeah, I looked him up online, and he's really good. So here it comes, Save Me.
When the shadows cover your pretty face and your thoughts are floating up in space, and you wonder if things would just be better off without you, you're not alone. When you try so hard to push
All right, so there we go. That was awesome.
Back.
We're not, as I
Thanks,
said,
man.
we're not judging the type of music because it's not for us. But you know, it's the video is really fantastic. The whole message behind it is awesome. So yeah, I don't know if you could say that, but I feel like you have this type of, you feel engaged with like this type of how do you say that, you with the blood bank and with SFA and with this type of video, don't you feel like really compelled by this type of messages that not a lot of people that can give them exposure? I don't know if I'm saying correctly, but
I'm not sure if there isn't people that can't give them exposure, but like it's when I read the script from the director, like if I can connect with the piece on paper, I know I'm going to do a better job visually. Like I know I'm going to push myself harder than I would for, say, a product commercial. If I think there's like a higher purpose or something, like, you know, a message that could be doing some good to it. So that isn't to say that all the projects I shoot are like that, but when they do come along, it is exciting to be able to like put images to that.
True. Because as I said, like I've seen your work with the blood bank, and I don't know, I felt like this was something that you've wanted maybe to explore in terms of like 2020 or 2021 to, I don't know, give some push to these type of messages. I don't know, that was my feeling, but yeah.
Well, the other thing that I kind of like about the Canadian Blood Services stuff is like, I don't think what I'm doing is anything new to cinematography by any means. I think these things have all been done before by people far more talented than myself. But a lot of times that, like, you see PSAs, like they're very corporate-y feeling. They're very, you know, they're not as exciting. They're not as sexy as, like, to say a Nike, Adidas, like an Under Armour ad. So if you can kind of like find a way to make the Canadian Blood Service stuff feel more like, you know, substantial, like an exciting commercial, that's a fun challenge in itself, to be like, okay, we've seen the guy running with the basketball, but like, how can we bring that energy to people donating blood, to teen suicide? Like, how can we, you know, bring that excitement to topics that don't normally get that light shed on it?
I see. We're just gonna jump on like I call it the training. I don't know why I call it this way, but you know, this is some. We have a lot of images for this one, so we're gonna maybe go a little bit quick on them. But so yeah, this is the one. Yeah, it's still the one. So do you want to comment on it with the Falcon Eye and bounce and the black V flat? This looks.
Yep. So this is the dinner time scene where Connor, who has an eating disorder, is kind of pushing food around on his plate, and his father's telling him to eat. And we walked into the location, and this is like, you know, a DP's dream. Long hallway, chandelier over top, a lot of wood tones, windows with a porch on floor level. Like, it looks good, but once again, like, this room was set up for success. So one of the little tricks I do with chandeliers, or a lot of practicals, is those chandeliers are dimmed down to like the absolute lowest they can go before they start flickering, because chandeliers actually don't provide that flattering of light. They just look great as specular highlights in your scene, but they're a bunch of little point sources that can create weird shadows on your face. So if you can dim them down to the point where they're not actually affecting any skin, but you can bring in your own light sources, as we have the Falcon Eyes here, you get great motivation, because people just assume that the chandelier is lighting them, even though that's never how it would look. But you get like this awesome motivation. It's kind of like putting someone next to a window, or the equivalent of that. Like, it's gonna look, whenever your light looks motivated, you can hide it so much more, like regardless of level or shape. Like, as long as someone can reasonably think, where would that light come from, you'll be able to get away with so much more.
Interesting. Very interesting. Next one. Oh, this is one of the beasts, the Aperture 300D.
Yeah, and this is more just my stylistic, quote unquote moonlight coming from outside. And it was more just to raise the level on the staircase and add a bit of blue into the scene. I think we had some CTV on there. So, once again, color contrast, practicals, softening things up, doing some bounces. It's, I'm looking at these setups and I'm like, it doesn't seem like rocket scientists when I'm breaking down my work.
I see what you mean. I see also in a lot of your works that you really like practical into the background of your shots, which is really as you said, motivated light. So
yeah, anything that adds a depth cue too, like you might not be able to tell how far back a hallway is, but if you can put a light back there, it just gives an extra streak along your scene to say like, oh wow, this is a very expansive scene. It would be like looking down a cave. If you had 3 lights at different distances, it gives you perspective of how deep that cave is. Where if it's just pitch black, it almost looks like a 2D image, like it doesn't have that 3D pop. So carrying around a couple of lamps with like I think when I was in Saskatchewan, I flew out with like 3 of my own practical bulbs, just because like I have my favorite brightness change bulbs that I got from Home Depot that I never leave home without.
So the customs were like anything to declare, and 3 light bulbs, and that's it.
Oh man, flying with gear is
the pain.
I'm shocked by the things sometimes I get pulled aside for to answer for, and then other times, like sometimes it's V-mount batteries, other times they wanted to tear apart my anamorphic lens, and I gave them quite a stink about that. But they let like the V-mount batteries in the drone go, and I'm like, you're more concerned about like this old German anamorphic scope, but you're gonna let like these V-mount batteries pass no problem?
Yeah.
All right. It's just a very like flight by flight basis what's gonna get flagged.
Oh well, okay, next one. So
so I've done this setup a bunch for like Canadian Blood Services. Like I am not athletic, but I do shoot a lot of sports stuff. So like basketball in general, if you're going to be shooting a basketball court, do a giant source one side of the court, as many lights as you can pump through that thing. So I think we have an 8x8 here flagged off, and then backlight whatever the action is moving towards. So if you look at the top of the frame behind the basketball net, there's another, I want to say 300D with CTO on it.
Yep,
as I recall.
Yeah, it is.
So that just gives everybody on the court a bit of edge, a bit of bounce back as the light like pummels down to the ground and will push back up. And then we had just a bunch of like little off-brand LEDs that we'd push into the corners of the stands wherever we needed a bit of level or a bit of spot to make it look like overhead fluorescence. We're creating these pools of light.
Interesting. Wall accent light, could you just explain to me why? Is it because you knew that it's gonna that the wall are just gonna be in the shot, or
it's kind of two-pronged approach for why I use wall accent lights. Like if you have a giant large source and a backlight, that looks great. But if you're not creating a Nike ad, it's going to look, I think on the too stylized side, like my look still is stylized, very stylized, but it's kind of rooted in the average person could still say this is a real world.
I see.
And if you have a giant soft source and a backlight in a basketball court, that corner where the bleachers are is just going to fall off to blackness. In real life, no one lights their basketball court, so only the light is over the basketball court. Like the whole court is lit up. But I still want the focus to be the middle of the court. If I can push a bit of light into the bleachers, it gives that perception of like, oh, all those awful overhead fluorescents are on, and this is just how it looked when they turned up, when really it took us an hour to set this up. But it's just those little tells that are part of like I can tell where Nick put the 8x8. And it's like, if you do those wall accents, you can't feel your key quite as much.
I see. Interesting. I didn't know. So it's good to know. Now I know.
There you go.
All right. So basically this with the practical,
Connor's bathroom stuff where he's throwing up. More CTB and a 300D for stylized moonlight through the window. I thought that the scene needed something else, so we clamped an ice light with CTB right above him as kind of like a topper light, just to give more menacing, kind of like a harder punch on him. So it wasn't just this like, you know, super soft source from the side. I just wanted this, like, because it was a dark moment for him, I just wanted to push him out a bit, and the ice light did the trick. And then, you know, color contrast, I have my trusty practicals with my bulbs on the outside to kind of like give some separation. And yeah, that's pretty.
This is so interesting to see some BTS, and I would definitely recommend to everyone who's watching to go check these out on your Instagram account, because it gives a really, really great understanding with also the parts of the videos on how you did it and how we could definitely implement on our sets to just, I don't know, move things around and try to experiment with those type of lighting. So thank you for that, because your breakdowns are really, really interesting to see, and also to see the final result and the BTS result is really, really intense.
I think that's an important part of it. I'm always weary when people will show you how to do something, but they don't show you the final product, and I'm like, should I be listening to you? Like, if I'm doing an audio course and someone's like, here's my 5 tips on how to mix a voiceover, but I don't get to hear your final voiceover mix,
maybe it was
shitty, a little more weary.
Exactly. Yeah, but you know, your videos are great, so hey, you were an inspiration for guys like me and the people I'm working with, so thanks to you. It doesn't seem like it, but for at the end of like 1 hour and 30 minutes of breakdown and seeing videos and talking, I told you it will go really, really fast. I had so many questions for you on like a lot of things, but right now we will need to end, so you're gonna go take care of your kids, obviously.
Yes.
And
I can feel my wife's anger seeping through the wall.
So thanks to you so much, and I would, if you would like to come back, because I had so many questions for you, maybe we could just like reschedule another time, and obviously we're still gonna talk to each other on Instagram, like in comments and in DMs and stuff, but again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I really, as I said, like, I don't know, 30 times, I really enjoy your work. Keep on doing what you do best, and I hope to see a lot of things on Instagram in 2020 when the virus is gonna be out of our memories.
Yeah, I'm running out of post-production, so we'll see how the next couple of months look, but I'm excited to get back, and yeah, let's set up a Q&A session if you want.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks to you, and I'll let you the final word before I'll let you go. Did you have anything to say or to add to the people who are watching us, like for any tips or advice, or just like what you would like, if you were yourself like 5 years ago, what would you like to know?
No,
that's hard.
I always feel like that's the question they ask, like when I'm listening to podcasts, they ask like real DPs, and they get just as stumped with it, and it's like, it's tough to say like what you would say to yourself 5 years ago, because there, you know, it's all a learning process, and there's no one quick tip that's like, oh, if I knew this, I could skip 5 years of learning. But like one thing I've just always taken to heart, even early on, was if you're looking to get better at what you do, after every shoot, analyze your footage. I don't care if you were the second shooter on a project, if you were the DP, if you were, you know, first AC and you have access to the footage, but you knew the setups, you knew the motivation. If you can analyze the footage after, you're going to make such larger steps in improving what you want to do on the next shoot, because I find there's this big disconnect between shooting and thinking you did great and then just walking away and then letting the post-production machine flow, and then you see the final product. Like, you don't know how the grade went. You don't know, like, was my exposure good? Were my ratios good? Like, I have added a practical back there? Did I add too many practicals back there? Did it look ridiculous? Like, if you can analyze your work within like 2 days after you shot it, you'll be able to have a better feedback system of, did I do good or did I do bad? If I did good, great, bank that. That's an idea that I can bring to the next shoot. That's a solid idea. Did I do bad? That's just as good information, because now I can either say, drop that idea, don't ever use that again, or what would I have changed to make that a good idea? And then by the time you get to your next shoot, let's say there's 45 shots on for the day for a commercial. The shoot I had before, I was happy with 27 of them, and I didn't like the rest of them. Maybe the next time I liked 32 of them. And over time, you're closing that gap between like what I didn't like and what I do like. Now, what I do like and what I don't like, that's where you have to trust your eye. And that's the tougher part, because you have to critically look at your stuff and be like, is this what I was going for?
That's what you said to me at the beginning. You said, trust your eye. I remember this sentence that you said to me like 1 year ago.
If you can trust your eye, you'll never second guess yourself on set. Like if you're looking at the back of your monitor and you're like, this feels right, well, you trust yourself. So that must feel pretty good. But if you're always waiting for validation from like posting something or getting someone else to tell you that it's great, then you're not going to know on set. You're going to know 2 days after, which is an awful time to know whether you're doing something right.
True.
So
all right.
Really just like taking that extra step and analyzing your work, which is, not the fun part, because you're going to find some shots that are like, you're like, woof, I really biffed it on that one. But that's good information to know. That's like
part of the learning process, I guess. Yeah,
it is.
All right. Well, thanks again so much for being there, and I really hope to see your work flowing on Instagram in 2020, as I said. And I wish you all the best, to you and your family, and I hope you guys are gonna stay safe back there.
You as well, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks to you. Have a great one, Nick.
You too. See ya.
So it was Nick. C'était Nick Pilecki, tout le monde. Je suis plus que content d'avoir eu la chance de m'entretenir avec lui pour l'ensemble de cette entrevue-là. C'est comme, on dirait que je suis un peu à moitié, mais c'est tellement... pour moi, c'était un honneur de l'avoir sur le show. Je m'attendais vraiment pas à ce qu'il accepte d'être là. Puis... comme je disais, c'est vraiment pas un mensonge. Là. Je le suis vraiment intensément depuis plusieurs années. Puis j'adore vraiment beaucoup son travail. Fait que je suis un peu shaky, mais bon. Encore une fois, merci beaucoup d'avoir resté avec nous pour le live. J'apprécie tellement que vous laissiez des commentaires puis que vous faisiez en sorte d'être là puis de partager des histoires. Vous m'avez envoyé des trucs complètement malade. J'ai trop hâte de vous en partager pour les prochaines semaines. Je pense qu'on est rendu, à partir d'aujourd'hui, je pense qu'on a encore 16 autres personnes qui sont planifiées pour le live stream, ce qui est complètement malade, chose que je ne m'attendais pas du tout. Encore une fois, merci tout le monde pour le partage, que ce soit des portfolios, que ce soit même votre propre histoire. Encore une fois, Picture Profile, qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est une intention simplement d'avoir la chance de jaser avec du monde, encore une fois sans prétention, du monde de la prod. Alors, on a la chance en ce moment d'avoir beaucoup de directeurs photos, parce que bon, c'est certaines personnes que je côtoie. Aussi des réalisateurs, mais c'est sûr et certain que si vous avez la chance de m'envoyer d'autres personnes qui sont aussi de l'industrie, que ce soit, on a parlé beaucoup d'éclairage aujourd'hui, donc que ce soit Electro, Grip, Gaffer, que ce soit au niveau de Assist Cam, que ce soit au niveau de même MUA, il n'y a vraiment pas de limite avec les personnes avec qui est-ce que j'ai envie de jaser. Puis je pense qu'on va même aussi potentiellement ouvrir avec au niveau des photographes, parce qu'il y a tellement de talent à Montréal et ailleurs que j'ai juste trop hâte de regarder encore des stills de d'autres personnes. Fait que si vous avez la chance de m'envoyer ça, de me faire parvenir ça, vous avez toutes mes coordonnées sur pictureprofile.ca. Vous allez aussi pouvoir revoir d'autres entrevues qu'on a faites. On est déjà rendu à la 6e entrevue, c'est quand même assez fou. Vous avez la chance de regarder les anciennes entrevues qu'on a faites, une petite description, certains stills aussi. les différents directeurs photos puis de réalisateurs qu'on a eu la chance de jaser. Puis aussi, il va y avoir mes coordonnées. Il y a mon adresse, il y a mes réseaux sociaux, mais aussi mon numéro de téléphone parce que je suis vraiment YOLO de même, ça a l'air. N'hésitez vraiment pas à m'appeler. Ça va faire super plaisir de juste savoir c'est quoi votre histoire puis qu'on puisse trouver un moment pour jaser en live devant des centaines de millions de personnes. Fait que, encore une fois, merci beaucoup tout le monde d'avoir été là. C'est trop cool. Puis j'ai vraiment hâte qu'on se retrouve la semaine prochaine. Là, on est lundi, fait qu'on va se revoir comme une deuxième fois cette semaine. Fait que à la prochaine tout le monde. Merci beaucoup. Puis à la prochaine. Merci là.